I hope you're having a great day today, and what we're going to be looking at are vintage horror comics. Now these are creepy, scary. Look at this guy, he's in a world of hurt. Gravekeeper. This is a free resource that you can use, and it's completely free for commercial purposes too. So it could be commercial, t-shirts, coffee mugs, art prints. Maybe you want to have an art project for your house or for educational purposes. Commercial, personal. We're going to take a deep dive on this website today, and I'm going to show you a couple cool comic book covers here that are creepy and scary, and you can use them for any reason you like. Let's go. So a lot of times when you hear the word free, you might think, well, what's the catch? And in this case, there is no catch. These are public domain comic books. And that means usually that they're really old, and they're so old that the copyright has expired on them. So in this case, there's a whole website dedicated to public domain comic books. And not just horror comic books, but that's the one that I'll be checking out today in a bit more detail. Now the website is called Comic Book Plus, and so it's just comicbookplus.com. And what you can do when you get onto this page is you can select, there's almost 40,000 comic books that are sitting on this web page, and they're all free and they're all public domain, and that means you can use them for personal use, commercial use. You can, make art prints with them, any sort of art project. And I'm just going to select on this categories, and I'm going to scroll on down and look at all the different categories: adventure, crime, horror, mixed bag, nonfiction, one-shot, sci-fi. Well, I'm going to click on this horror category, and we're going to see what's hanging out in the horror category. Well, we're already off to a bad start. This lady's having a horrible day here with this guy chasing her. So the telling of horror tales must date back to the dawn of civilization. So there's a little bit of a history here. Now these aren't just the comic book covers. These are all the comic book, including the ads, the interiors. So here's the different public domain books. Now, you're not going to find Marvel and DC comics on here. What you're going to find are old, defunct comic book companies. So for example, this Adventures into Darkness is, we'll just pop this one open. This was published by Better Nedor Standard Pines. So that's the publisher's name. And then there's all the different issues of Adventure into Darkness and the cover date as well, so you can see exactly how old it is. So I'm going to go to the last one here, Adventure into Darkness number 14. And we'll just check it out. It gives you the date it was added and the size. You can read the entire comic book here if you like. So here's Adventure into Darkness number 14. And then down below is the actual comic book in all of its glory. Now these are old, these are scans of old comic books. So some of the quality, these are vintage old comic books, and they're going to be a little bit beat up. But the artwork in them is absolutely spectacular. And then all I want to do here, if I'm going to read the book, is above where it says Adventures into Darkness, I can select a different issue if I wanted. So let's say I want to select number 7. Now it will give me number 7. Beware the Betraying Hands, Adventures into Darkness. So I can go previous book, next book, and then inside the comic, I can select any page I like. I can also just click on the page itself, and it will move to the next page. This is Draw Me, try me for a free $280 art course. So if you're ever looking for free images that are sort of sketchy, that are, I don't mean sketchy like they're no good. I mean sketchy like someone's drawn them. Here's like a beautiful silhouette of a woman's profile, and you could certainly use that as it's part of a public domain comic book, and it's an old ad, 1952 by Visual Edition. So this is the entire scan of the comic book. We'll go to page number 3 here. It's Spring in Old New York. This is the Pit of Horror. One of the things I've noticed about old comic books is they're beautifully illustrated. Like the illustration, considering this is like a 10-cent comic book, I mean, you're really getting your money's worth here. And I've noticed as well, they're very wordy. There's not a lot of like huge splash pages like you see in comic books, in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. They're very wordy. So they're almost like actual books, like comic books. Like if you're a kid, this is a lot of reading. And yeah, if you're not into superheroes, these can be a really, really fun read because there's often a twist involved or some sort of, Twilight Zone, situation. So that's the Betraying Hands. I'm going to go to another publisher here. So we've got Adventures into Darkness, Adventures into the Unknown. These are just 3 pages here of horror books. I'm actually going to go to the next page. We'll just do a real deep dive here. Let's see what's on page 2. So we've got, Mr. Mystery. What is this? Mr. Mystery ran from 1951 to 1954. I'm going to click on that. And Mr. Mystery has 20 books available. I'm going to go to Mr. Mystery 4. I'm totally picking things here at random. And we can see here, there's a lot of women in trouble in these comic books, right? I mean, here's another creepy old dude. I'm detecting a theme here. And, some of the scans are pretty high quality. Some of the scans are a little bit fuzzy. This one's a little fuzzy, so I'm going to see if I can go to another book here. We'll go to Mr. Mystery number 6. This one's a bit better. Again, different lady, same old creeps. Am I right, ladies? So this lady here is over a cauldron. This seems like a lot of work, eh? And again, these are beautifully illustrated. And when I click on the actual book, then I will now get into the ads and then the actual horror comic itself. And these are just, high quality scans. I can right click and I could download this if I wanted. I can just click and continue to move forward. So if you're looking for an individual piece of artwork, like for example, I could take this scan of this book and just crop this one image out if I wanted. Or maybe I'm looking for, a specific picture of a ghost or a ghoul. I could certainly do that as well, right? Here's a creepy guy here in the corner. And, that might be something where you could take that in Photoshop, you could use that as a vintage image. A really popular type of artwork is women like this one here, and she's like either crying or she's nervous. It's like just a face, and then you just put that on. It's kind of like a Roy Lichtenstein print, idea, or an Andy Warhol pop culture print. So you could always make your own because you could just take, some sort of an image. And these are pretty high quality here. I can scroll right in, and I can make it, quite, that's a nice high quality image. You could always clean it up in Photoshop as well. Probably the one, I think, if I had to pick one comic book that I really think is sort of the premier public domain comic book, it would be Chamber of Chills. I'm going to open that up. Unfortunately, EC Comics is not public domain. And so those are the ones that are called like Vault of Horror. And it's like, those are like really famous. But these ones are pretty high quality. So these are Tales of Terror and Suspense, Chamber of Chills. I don't think it's the same lady in chains, but there's a whole bunch of creepy guys here tying up women. One of the reasons that horror comics got into so much trouble in the 1950s was there was a big inquiry done by the government where they really went after horror comics, and it's kind of where the term juvenile delinquent got popular, because these were very violent and misogynistic comics, and parents were, I guess at the time, rightly concerned, that their kids were going to grow up and all be criminals, because they're reading stories as impressionable youth about women getting tied to the train tracks and people getting dropped into vats of acid and that sort of thing. So I think that, these look pretty tame compared to today's action movies, obviously. I mean, nobody's getting, chopped up on camera here, although there are some axes and there are some, serial killers, and a lot of, crime comics especially were really, really violent. But these are more like fantastical, supernatural comics. A lot of ghosts, a lot of dead, zombie sort of things happening. I mean, how creepy is that, eh? The guy's doing his like chores and there's like a big ghost sitting on the thing here. I mean, that's, if you're like 7 years old in the 1950s reading this, I can imagine you're not going to bed anytime soon. I mean, these are truly scary comics here. So Chamber of Chills is definitely one that I recommend. If you're going to pick one book to kind of start reading just for fun, Chamber of Chills is a really, I think, high quality. This was published by a company called Harvey. And you might recognize Harvey Comics because they also came out with Casper the Friendly Ghost. There's a little devil character called Hot Stuff. Richie Rich is another one. Those were all published by Harvey. So these are public domain. I'm not saying that Richie Rich is public domain, but I'm saying these horror comics are public domain. And, you get pretty good value here because it's just a free website and you can, read horror comics to your heart's content. This guy needs a pedicure, holy moly. We got rats, we've got scared people. Lee Elias is one of the premier Golden Age comic book artists, and he did these just beautiful, and when I say beautiful, I mean like they evoke an emotion, right? Like these are almost Disney-esque in the ways that these present in a cover. I can imagine, this is a very famous cover here. This is number 18, issue number 18, and this is like creepy shaving a haircut guy. You've come to the right place for a shave and a haircut. I mean, that would look awesome on a t-shirt or, an art print for the house. So yeah, Chamber of Chills is definitely one that I would highly recommend. But there's so many different types here. Eerie is another one that is really good too. So I'm going to open up Eerie. These are tales of fantasy and suspense. And let's just see what we've got going on here in Eerie World. These ran from 1951 to 1952. It's really neat to read through some of these old comics just to see what society was like back then. What they considered, standards of, beauty and damsels in distress, what they considered scary. I mean, that's actually a pretty scary picture there. So this one's called Eerie, and this was by a company called Avon Periodicals. So again, a lot of like ghosts, a lot of skeletons, the undead, the Chamber of Death, the Honeymoon of Horror. And these are pretty creepy. And again, you just click on the book and you can start reading the actual comic. So this is The Thing from the Sea. This is Eerie number 3. Oh my goodness. Home invasion much? The Monster of the Storm. Oh no, he's coming in through the painting, it looks like. I thought he was coming in through the window. This looks like the painting's coming to life. Don't you hate it when that happens? You buy some artwork, you put it on the wall, and the next thing you know, we got Oscar the Grouch here crawling through the wall. Holy moly. Yeah, these are actually really, look, I'm a fully grown adult. Fully functioning member of society, but I will say these are actually kind of scary. Like it's, if you put on your little, childlike, reading glasses and you think, okay, I'm going to pretend like I'm 7. These are actually pretty creepy comics, and I highly recommend them. And again, they're completely free. The website name is comicbookplus.com. And when you get on the page, I'll just scroll up here to the top, you can select a category at the top of the page, and then in this case what we just looked at was horror, and then that gives you all the horror comics. But there's other ones too. There's crime, fantasy, romance, Western, and there's even more. There's animal comics, medical love comics, school, pirates, there's all sorts. You can pick a date off the newsstand as well. There's some really weird ones too, like for example in the 1950s, a really, really popular genre of comic book was Western, and then romance and sci-fi were quite popular as well, along with horror. And you'll notice there's not a lot, like there's one superhero category, but the rest are like totally have nothing to do with superheroes. So this is a great, great website. I highly recommend it. And we've got the latest comics over on the right hand side if you're all caught up on the 30,000 books that are already scanned in. There's new ones, and then there's a pretty easy to navigate website here. There's categories, home page. You can just click on the home page, takes you back here, and then you can look through different resources on this website. So I hope you guys found that helpful. I really, really love old comic books, and there's just something, I don't know, on the one hand very innocent about them, but also those horror comics, man, those are some chilly willy reading there, because there's some really creepy images in there. So anyway, I hope you found that helpful, guys. Enjoy your day, go forth and create, be an artist. Thank you so much for watching.